I'm Natalie Reed, 33 years old, and last Saturday I stood in the corner of the most prestigious art auction in New York, watching my family network with Manhattan's elite. My mother Eleanor tugged at my sleeve when the curator approached, whispering, "She's just here to clean up afterward," with a dismissive laugh that made my stomach clench. If only they knew the painting everyone was buzzing about, the one with the $3.5 million starting bid, was mine. The one I'd poured my soul into for months. Before I continue my journey from family mockery to artistic triumph, let me know where you're watching from and hit that like and subscribe button as I reveal how art became my ultimate revenge against those who never believed in me. Growing up in the Reed family estate in Greenwich, Connecticut meant privilege, expectations, and constant reminders that I wasn't meeting them. Our sprawling colonial home with its manicured gardens and tennis court became my beautiful prison, where appearances always mattered more than authenticity. I discovered my passion for art at 7 years old. While other kids were playing with dolls, I was mixing watercolors and attempting to capture the subtle expression on my grandfather's face. My first family portrait hung briefly in the kitchen before my mother Eleanor replaced it with a professional family photograph. "Darling, it's a sweet hobby, but let's keep amateur work in your bedroom," she said, patting my head while hanging the studio portrait. The word amateur stung even though I didn't fully understand its meaning yet. My father Richard built his wealth in investment banking. His definition of success was simple: accumulate wealth, display status symbols, marry strategically, and produce children who would continue the legacy. Art existed solely as an investment or decoration in his world. "The people who make art and the people who buy art are not the same class of people, Natalie," he explained once while writing a check for a painting he admitted he didn't even like. My sister Amanda embraced the family expectations flawlessly. 3 years older than me, she sailed through the right schools, joined the right clubs, dated the right boys, and eventually married the right man, a surgeon from a family with a name as old as ours. She was the golden child, the benchmark against which my failures were constantly measured. My brother Thomas, 2 years younger than me, found his role as the family peacekeeper. Whenever tensions rose over my impractical pursuits, he would change the subject or create a distraction. Years later, he confessed that he'd always secretly admired my artwork, sneaking into my room to look at my sketchbooks when everyone was asleep. Our family gatherings revolved around connections and appearances. Dinner conversations centered on stock portfolios, country club memberships, and which families were rising or falling in social standing. Art was discussed only in terms of investment value, never emotional resonance. The Reeds didn't feel art, they appraised it. My mother enrolled me in private school where creativity was channeled into productive outlets. When I won the regional young artist competition at 14, my teacher called my parents to discuss my potential. My mother listened politely, then enrolled me in additional calculus tutoring instead. "Math opens doors, Natalie. Drawing closes them," she explained while driving me to the tutor. "Do you want to end up struggling like your art teacher, Margaret? Living in that tiny apartment, driving that old car?" High school became a battlefield of expectations. I maintained the required GPA while secretly filling sketchbooks under my desk during economics lectures. My father expected me to major in business or finance, following Amanda's path into corporate success. The day my acceptance letter from Parsons School of Design arrived, I hid it and pretended to be considering Yale's economics program instead. The family celebration when I decided on Yale was lavish. My mother ordered a custom cake with a Yale bulldog. My father gave me his old class ring. Amanda bought me a briefcase for my future executive office. Only Thomas seemed to notice my forced smile. The truth came out 2 weeks before fall semester when the housing department called our home, asking why I hadn't responded to my roommate assignment. My mother answered the phone. The argument that followed was apocalyptic. My father threatened to cut financial support. My mother cried about family embarrassment. Amanda gave me pamphlets about business careers. Through it all, I stood firm for the first time in my life. Art wasn't a hobby or phase, it was my oxygen. "I'm going to Parsons," I said quietly after hours of shouting. "With or without your support." I moved into a tiny New York apartment with 2 roommates, working evenings as a barista to supplement the minimal support my parents begrudgingly provided. My father reminded me monthly that my arts and crafts degree was a waste of his money. College became my first taste of freedom. Surrounded by people who understood passion over practicality, I thrived. My technique developed, my perspective deepened, and my professors encouraged my unique vision. Still, years of family conditioning left me doubting my legitimacy. After graduation, I created my double life. To my family, I had come to my senses and taken a marketing position at a respectable firm. In reality, I was working at a small gallery during days and painting through the nights in my studio apartment. The marketing job existed only in carefully constructed stories I told at holiday gatherings. During this time, I developed my artistic identity as N.R. Gray, a deliberate separation from the Reed name and all its expectations. The pseudonym gave me freedom to create without the weight of family judgment. My work evolved into what critics would later call emotional abstract realism, technically skilled representations that fractured and reformed around emotional focal points. Every family gathering became an exercise in emotional endurance. My father would ask about fictional client accounts while my mother inquired about eligible bachelors at my non-existent office. Amanda paraded her promotions and eventually her enormous engagement ring. Thomas would squeeze my hand under the table when the questions became too pointed. The only true supporter I had was my grandmother Rose. Unlike her daughter Eleanor, Grandma Rose saw beauty in creation itself, not just its monetary value. Before she passed away when I was 28, she would sneak into my childhood bedroom to look at my latest sketches during holiday visits. "You have a gift for showing what people feel, not just what they look like," she told me the Christmas before she died. "Don't let anyone dim that light, especially not family." When Grandma Rose passed, she left each grandchild a small inheritance. Amanda received her antique pearl necklace. Thomas got her collection of first edition books. To me, she left $5,000 with a note. "For colors and canvases. Make something beautiful." That inheritance funded my first serious collection of professional materials and studio space rental. The painting that would eventually sell for millions, Inherited Silence, began on a canvas purchased with Grandma Rose's gift. The image depicted a family dinner table with fractured perspectives, empty chairs, and faces obscured by shadow and light. The only clear face was an elderly woman in the corner, watching with knowing eyes. As I approached my mid-30s, family pressure intensified. My mother's questions about marriage became less subtle. My father's disapproval of my extended adolescence grew sharper. Amanda, now with 2 perfect children, would send me fertility clinic brochures just in case. Through it all, I painted with increasing intensity, channeling their disapproval into my most honest work yet. Life changes on ordinary days. Mine transformed in a coffee shop 4 blocks from my apartment when I collided with Marcus Wilson while balancing a sketchbook and overfilled cup. The coffee spilled across the floor, and my sketchbook fell open as we both knelt to clean the mess. "I'm so sorry about your drawing," Marcus said, carefully blotting coffee from the edge of an open page. Then he paused, studying the sketch more carefully. "Wait, did you draw this?" The page showed a woman standing alone in a crowded room, her figure composed of fragmented brushstrokes, while everyone around her was rendered in perfect detail. It was a quick study for a larger work. "It's just a sketch," I said, embarrassed by his scrutiny. Marcus handed me his business card.
"I'm Marcus Wilson.
I own Perspective Gallery in Chelsea. And this isn't just anything. Would you consider showing me your portfolio?" I almost declined. Years of having my art dismissed had conditioned me to expect mockery or, at best, polite disinterest. But something in his genuine enthusiasm broke through my defenses. 3 days later, I brought a portfolio to his gallery after hours. Marcus spent 2 hours examining each piece, asking questions about technique and inspiration. He didn't rush or check his watch. He simply engaged with the work with genuine curiosity. "You have something unique," he said finally. "The technical skill is evident, but it's your perspective that's extraordinary. You show how emotions distort perception. I'd like to feature several pieces in our Emerging Artists Showcase next month." When I hesitated, he added, "Under any name you choose. Some artists prefer pseudonyms for creative freedom." That suggestion sparked something. "N.R. Gray," I said immediately. "That's my professional name." The first showing featured 3 of my smaller canvases. Priced modestly, they sold within the first week. Two art blogs mention my refreshing technique and emotional intelligence. A small local magazine featured a paragraph about newcomer N.R. Gray's promising debut. Marcus became my advisor and champion. Under his guidance, I developed a cohesive collection around themes of visibility, belonging, and emotional authenticity. We made the strategic decision to maintain my anonymity, allowing the work to stand entirely on its own merit. Mystery adds intrigue, Marcus explained, but more importantly, it forces people to engage with the art rather than the artist. My family, ironically, began mentioning this interesting new painter at dinner parties. My mother collected the very magazines featuring my work, completely unaware that her daughter's art was printed on those glossy pages. My father discussed the investment potential of emerging artists, including N.R. Gray, while I silently ate my holiday dinner. Apparently, this Gray person studied under Westlake at some point, my father announced during Thanksgiving, referencing my actual professor. Might be worth watching if more work appears. The double life took its toll. Each family gathering required elaborate lies about my fictional marketing career. Each success, as N.R. Gray, became a secret celebration I couldn't share. I developed two distinct wardrobes, Marketing Natalie, in sensible business casual for family visits, and Artist Natalie, in paint-splattered comfort for my real life. Marcus became my confidant, the only person who knew both versions of me. You'll have to reconcile these worlds eventually, he warned after a particularly successful gallery showing that I couldn't share with anyone else. Inherited Silence emerged during this period of dual existence. I worked on it exclusively at night, pouring my family history onto the canvas in layers of symbolism only I fully understood. The fractured dinner table. The empty chair where authenticity should sit. The shadows where communication failed. The single illuminated face of my grandmother watching it all. It became my most personal work and, unexpectedly, my most universal. When the painting was featured in the gallery's front window, a prominent collector named Julian Mercer stood studying it for nearly an hour. He returned 3 times that week before approaching Marcus about the artist. This isn't just technique, he told Marcus, unaware I was standing nearby pretending to browse. This is someone who understands the beautiful tragedy of family. I need to meet them. Marcus protected my identity while negotiating the sale. Inherited Silence sold for $80,000, more money than I'd ever seen at once. The sale caught attention from wider circles, and soon other collectors were inquiring about N.R. Gray's work. Then came the invitation that would change everything. The prestigious Westfield auction house selected Inherited Silence for their annual Contemporary Masters event, a validation I had never imagined possible. My painting would be featured alongside works by established artists whose names I had studied in textbooks. The pre-auction estimate began at $50,000, but quickly adjusted as interest grew. Art forums speculated about N.R. Gray's identity. A prominent critic wrote a feature analyzing the remarkable emotional literacy in my technique. 2 weeks before the auction, Marcus called with news that left me speechless. They've adjusted the estimate to potentially reach 7 figures, he said. Natalie, you might be looking at $1 million sale. Despite this success, my financial reality remained precarious. I reinvested most earnings into materials and studio space, maintaining the appearance of struggling but managing when visiting family. My apartment remained small, my clothes carefully chosen to suggest steady employment without notable success. When my mother mentioned the upcoming Westfield auction during a phone call, suggesting it as a networking opportunity for my marketing career, I felt the universe offering a perfect stage for truth. I could introduce you to some clients there, I said, crafting my attendance as a professional courtesy rather than personal interest. The night before the auction, panic overwhelmed me. I paced my apartment rehearsing potential scenarios. Would my family be proud or angry? Would they try to claim credit or distance themselves? Would this liberation feel as satisfying as I'd imagined? I nearly called Marcus to pull the painting, to maintain my comfortable anonymity. Instead, I sat before my easel and began a new canvas, a woman stepping from shadow into blinding light, her face a mixture of terror and exhilaration. I painted until dawn, finding courage in creation itself. As morning broke, I made my decision. After years of hiding, it was time to stand in my own light, regardless of who might turn away from its brightness. Auction day arrived with perfect dramatic timing, clear skies after a week of rain, as though the universe had cleared the stage for what would unfold. I selected my outfit with painful deliberation, a charcoal gray pantsuit professional enough to support my marketing career facade, but with artist-made earrings and a silk scarf that represented my true self. Small rebellions hidden in plain sight. I applied makeup carefully, creating what felt like armor against the inevitable criticism. Foundation to hide sleepless nights, concealer for the anxiety shadows beneath my eyes, lipstick as war paint. My hands trembled slightly, smudging eyeliner that I meticulously corrected. My phone chimed with a text from my mother. Meeting location changed.
Come to the house first.
Everyone's already here. The last-minute change was typical, a subtle power play ensuring I would arrive rushed and slightly disheveled while they would be perfectly composed. I drove my 10-year-old Honda to my parents' Greenwich estate, the car making a conspicuous contrast to the luxury vehicles lining their circular driveway. The dashboard clock showed I was actually 3 minutes early, a small victory immediately undermined by my father's greeting. Finally. We were about to leave without you, Richard Reed said, eyeing my car with familiar disapproval. When are you going to let me help you get a real car? When you get a real job, perhaps? Before I could respond, my mother emerged from a house, elegant in designer clothes that probably cost more than 3 months of my rent. Her eyes performed their usual head-to-toe assessment, cataloging perceived flaws. Natalie, darling, couldn't you have done something more with your hair? And that suit looks a bit worn at the cuffs. Amanda has a lovely Burberry you could have borrowed. Speaking of Amanda, my sister floated down the steps behind my mother, strategically extending her left hand to ensure the massive diamond on her finger caught the sunlight. Derek just upgraded my engagement ring for our anniversary, she announced without preamble. 12 carats now. Thomas emerged last, giving me a quick sympathetic smile before our father ushered everyone toward the waiting Mercedes. The Westfield doesn't tolerate tardiness, he reminded us, though we were still 40 minutes early. The car ride downtown became my mother's opportunity to coach me on proper networking. Remember to mention Yale when you introduce yourself, not that art school. And please try to speak with Harriet Westfield. Her husband's marketing firm always needs people, and you could use a more prestigious position. I nodded automatically, stomach tightening as we approached the historic Westfield building with its imposing marble columns and red carpet entrance. Photographers lined the walkway, capturing images of prominent attendees for society pages and art blogs. They're not for us, my mother whispered sharply when I hesitated at the sight of cameras. Walk quickly behind me. The Westfield's grand hall took my breath away despite my anxiety. Crystal chandeliers illuminated walls lined with preview displays of featured artworks. Servers circulated with champagne and delicate hors d'oeuvres. The crowd sparkled with designer fashion and jewelry that could fund a small country. My family immediately dispersed toward important people, leaving me standing alone near the entrance. A server offered champagne trays to clusters of guests around me, but passed by without a glance. I was invisible here, just as I'd been at home, a realization both painful and strangely empowering. I circulated slowly, catching fragments of conversation about market trends and collection values. Near the center of the room, I overheard 2 critics discussing the mysterious N.R. Gray. Remarkable emotional intelligence in the brushwork, said a woman in architectural glasses. But I suspected someone established working under pseudonym for creative freedom. The technique is too assured for a genuine newcomer. My sources suggest it's a woman, her companion replied, which makes the anonymity even more intriguing. Is she hiding from the market or making a statement about female artists being undervalued? I slipped away before my face could betray me, nearly colliding with Marcus in a quiet hallway. He pulled me into an alcove behind a massive floral arrangement. Are you ready? He asked, his usual calm demeanor showing cracks of excitement. They've positioned Inherited Silence as the highlight piece before intermission. The buzz is incredible. My family's here, I whispered, suddenly feeling like an imposter in both worlds. They have no idea. My mother introduced me to someone as just dabbling in marketing until she finds herself. Marcus squeezed my hand. Today they'll learn exactly who you are. But fair warning, there's been press interest in your identity. The auction house director might announce it. My heart hammered against my ribs. Will they do that without permission? Not explicitly, but they might mention N.R. Gray is in attendance. The spotlight might find you metaphorically even if you stay silent. A chime sounded, announcing 10 minutes until the auction began. Marcus gave my shoulder a reassuring squeeze before disappearing to his reserved seat. I made my way into the auction room, scanning for my family. They had secured places in the VIP section, naturally. My father sat checking his phone, likely calculating potential returns on various lots. My mother leaned toward Margot Sinclair, the socialite whose approval she'd sought for decades. Amanda displayed her ring to anyone whose gaze lingered nearby. Thomas alone seemed uncomfortable, tugging at his collar and glancing around restlessly. I found a seat in the back row, suddenly grateful for my family's disinterest in my whereabouts. My palms dampened as the auctioneer took his position at the podium. The room quieted, the lights dimmed slightly, and the first lot appeared on the massive screen behind him. The auction began with smaller works, prices climbing steadily into 5 and 6 figures. I barely registered the proceedings, my attention fixed on catalog page 23, where Inherited Silence was featured with a full-page image. The description noted, "The emerging master N.R. Gray brings extraordinary emotional depth to contemporary family dynamics." As the auction progressed, I watched my family's behavior with new perspective. My mother loudly explained art movements to Margot, as though she were an expert. Amanda pretended to bid on a small sculpture before, reluctantly, withdrawing at $50,000. My father calculated returns on his phone, occasionally nudging Thomas to pay attention to how real investments work. A tall, elegantly dressed woman approached my row, scanning seat numbers before sitting beside me. I recognized her instantly as Vivian Pierce, the collector whose acquisition of a Basquiat had made headlines last year. "Are you with one of the galleries?" she asked politely. Before I could answer, my mother's voice carried from several rows ahead. "Oh, that's just my daughter," she called back, noticing us with perfect timing. "She's just here to clean up afterward." We let her tag along for exposure to success. My father chuckled without looking up from his phone. "Art is for people who can afford to buy it, not make it, isn't that right, Natalie?" Amanda turned, offering her practiced, sympathetic smile. "We include her as charity case. Family obligation and all that." Thomas stared at his shoes, saying nothing. Each comment landed like a physical blow, familiar yet freshly painful in this context. Vivian Pierce's expression shifted from polite interest to uncomfortable pity. She murmured something about checking on another lot and moved seats, leaving me alone again. The auctioneer's voice cut through my humiliation. "Ladies and gentlemen, we now come to Lot 23, the much-anticipated Inherited Silence by N.R. Gray." The room's energy shifted instantly. People sat straighter, phone conversations ended, and a palpable anticipation filled the space. "This remarkable work," the auctioneer continued, "demonstrates raw emotional power seldom seen in contemporary realism. Note the fractured perspective of the family table, the empty chairs representing absence of authentic connection, the shadowed faces suggesting emotional distance. Only the grandmother figure remains fully illuminated, perhaps the sole witness to family truth." The massive screen displayed my painting in perfect detail, highlighting elements I'd poured my soul into creating. Every brushstroke, every color choice, every shadow represented years of unspoken family dynamics. "We'll open the bidding at $500,000, the auctioneer announced. A collective murmur rippled through the crowd. Opening bids typically started lower, even for featured works. The high starting point signaled the auction house's confidence in the painting's value. Paddles rose immediately. $500,000 from number 42. "Do I hear 600,000? More paddles. $700,000 from number 16. $800,000 from number 29. My father leaned toward my mother, loudly enough for nearby rows to hear. Absurd prices for random splashes. I'd never pay that for something my housekeeper could create. The irony nearly made me laugh despite my nerves. $1 million from number 35, the auctioneer called. The room's excitement intensified. Bidding accelerated between serious collectors now, jumping in $100,000 increments. $2 million from number 17. 2.5 million from number 42. 3 million from number 8. I couldn't breathe. The painting that had begun in my tiny apartment, funded by my grandmother's modest inheritance, created through nights of solitary work and emotional excavation, had become the center of a bidding war among the world's elite collectors. 3.5 million from number 51. A moment of silence followed. The auctioneer scanned the room. 3.5 million going once, going twice. The gavel struck. Sold for $3.5 million to Ms. Sophia Lambert. Applause filled the room. I sat frozen, unable to process what had just occurred. The auctioneer waited for the applause to subside before speaking again. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a special announcement. It's our great honor to have the artist with us today. Marcus stood from his seat near the front, and I thought for a terrifying moment he might point me out. Instead, he simply nodded toward the auctioneer. The brilliant creator behind N.R. Gray is none other than Natalie Reed. Complete silence fell. Every head turned, searching the room. My family's faces transformed in slow motion, confusion, then shock, then disbelief as realization dawned. The spotlight found me in the back row, illuminating me physically just as my work had finally brought my true self into light. The spotlight felt both blinding and revealing as I rose from my seat. Time seemed to slow as hundreds of faces turned toward me in unified shock. The weight of their gazes pressed against me physically, some curious, some appreciative, some skeptical, but all intensely focused. My legs carried me forward automatically while my mind raced to catch up with this sudden transformation. Each step down the aisle felt significant, marking the path from invisibility to undeniable presence. The hushed whispers created a wave of sound that followed my progress. At the front of the room, Sophia Lambert, the collector who had just paid $3.5 million for my painting, stepped forward to meet me. Her reputation as a ruthless business mogul contrasted sharply with her warm smile as she took both my hands in hers. "Extraordinary work, Ms. Reed," she said, her voice carrying in the silent room. "You've captured something universal, yet deeply intimate." I'm honored to add inherited silence to my collection. From the corner of my eye, I saw my family's frozen expressions. My mother Eleanor recovered first, social training kicking in as she rushed forward with arms outstretched. "Natalie, my talented daughter," she exclaimed loudly enough for everyone nearby to hear. We always knew she had special talent. I still have her first painting hanging in her home. The lie was so blatant I almost laughed. That first painting had been discarded decades ago, replaced with a professional portrait within days of its creation. My father pushed forward next, business card somehow already in hand. "We should discuss management options immediately," he said, his voice shifting into what I recognized as his client acquisition tone. "Family businesses have significant tax advantages." Amanda remained seated, her face contorted in an expression I'd never seen before, confusion, jealousy, and calculation battling for dominance. Her hand no longer displayed her ring quite so prominently. Only Thomas moved with genuine emotion, wrapping me in a quick, fierce hug before whispering, "I always told you all she was good." Nobody listened. Reporters materialized around us, digital recorders extended. Questions overlapped. "Ms. Reed, why the pseudonym? How long have you been working as N.R. Gray? What inspired inherited silence?" The last question penetrated my emotional fog. I looked directly at my mother as I answered. "It's about the silence that fills houses where truth isn't spoken. About sitting at tables where appearances matter more than authenticity. About the weight of expectations that leave no room for individual voice." My mother's carefully composed smile faltered as the meaning registered. Her eyes narrowed slightly, a familiar warning sign from my childhood. Marcus appeared at my elbow, experienced in managing artistic revelations. "Ms. Reed will be giving an exclusive interview with Art Monthly in the private salon. If you'll excuse us." He guided me toward a door marked private, leaving my family and the press behind momentarily. The small room beyond contained elegant furniture and a waiting journalist, but before the interview could begin, the door burst open again. My family entered like an invasion force, my mother leading with determination, father analyzing angles, Amanda sulking, and Thomas bringing up the rear with an apologetic expression. We need a private moment with our daughter, my mother informed the journalist with her impeccable social command voice. The reporter glanced at Marcus, who looked to me for direction. I nodded. 5 minutes. When the door closed, leaving only family, my mother's composure shattered. How dare you humiliate us this way, she hissed, voice low but vibrating with anger. Years of lying about your career? Creating some alternate identity? Making us look foolish in front of everyone who matters. My father, ever practical, focused immediately on finances. $3.5 million, Natalie. We need to discuss this windfall as a family. There are tax implications, investment opportunities, family trust considerations. Is that really your first concern? I interrupted, finding my voice with surprising steadiness. Not congratulations? Not pride in what I've accomplished? Just how to manage my money. Of course we're proud, my mother said automatically, though her eyes remained cold. But you've been deliberately deceptive. All those marketing job stories when you were just painting. Just painting, I repeated. Just creating work that sold today for $3.5 million? Just developing a career that's been featured in every major art publication this year. Which you hid from us, Amanda interjected, finding her voice. You let us believe you were struggling in some entry-level position while secretly becoming successful. Was it fun making us look ignorant? Was that the point? I studied my sister's face, seeing not just anger but something deeper. Fear that the family hierarchy had irreversibly shifted. The point was survival, I said quietly. You never believed in me. Not once. I turned to face each family member individually. You told me art was a hobby, not a career. You mocked my education choices. You dismissed my passion as childish. You literally just told a prominent collector I was just here to clean up. Why would I have shared my success with people who never supported its possibility? My mother's face reddened. That's completely untrue. We supported your little art projects from childhood. We paid for those expensive art classes. You paid for business school, I corrected. I paid for Parsons myself with student loans I'm still repaying. My father cleared his throat. Perhaps there have been misunderstandings. Water under the bridge now. What matters is how we proceed. I've managed significant assets for decades. It makes sense for me to handle this situation, for tax purposes, naturally. Tax purposes, I repeated flatly. Not because you suddenly see me as valuable now that my work has monetary worth. Thomas finally spoke.
Natalie, I'm sorry.
I should have stood up for you more. I knew how talented you were, but I never said anything when they dismissed you. A knock at the door interrupted whatever my mother planned to say next. Marcus opened it slightly. Apologies for the interruption, but several major collectors are waiting to meet Natalie, including the Guggenheim acquisition director. The moment crystallized everything. On one side stood my family, who had never seen me until my value became monetary. On the other waited people who appreciated what I created, who had recognized worth in my vision before knowing my name or face. I need you to leave, I said, looking directly at my parents. Excuse me? My mother's voice rose an octave. This is my professional moment. I've worked years for this recognition. I need you to leave so I can focus on these opportunities. My father's face darkened. Now see here.
No, interrupta.
For once you see here. This is my career. My achievement. My moment. I'm not asking. The shock on their faces would have been comical in another context. The family rebellious child finally setting a boundary they couldn't cross. My mother's mouth opened and closed without sound. My father's usual commanding presence seemed to deflate slightly. Amanda recovered first.
Well.
Congratulations on your little painting. We'll discuss this further at home, I'm sure. She tugged my father's sleeve, leading the retreat. Thomas lingered briefly. I really am proud of you, Nat. Always was. He squeezed my hand before following the others. As the door closed behind them, I took my first full breath of the day. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Ready to meet your admirers as yourself? I smoothed my jacket and nodded. Absolutely. No more hiding. The remainder of the auction passed in a blur of introductions, congratulations, and business cards pressed into my hands. Collectors who had previously ignored me now sought my insights. Gallery owners who wouldn't have returned my calls now offered exclusive contracts. Critics who had analyzed N.R. Gray's work now praised my courage in maintaining artistic integrity through anonymity. I answered questions on autopilot, signed a preliminary agreement with Sophia Lambert regarding exhibition rights, and exchanged contact information with the Guggenheim representative. Throughout it all, I remained acutely aware of my family's absence. They had left the auction entirely, their seats conspicuously empty during the final lots. By the time I returned to my apartment that evening, exhaustion had settled into my bones. The emotional whiplash of humiliation, vindication, confrontation, and celebration had depleted every reserve. I kicked off my shoes, still wearing the armor-like suit, and collapsed onto my worn sofa. The silence of my small apartment felt different now, no longer the quiet of invisibility, but the peace of truth finally spoken. I hadn't planned to reveal myself this way, hadn't anticipated the dramatic confrontation with my family, but now that it had happened, I felt an unexpected lightness. The phone I had silenced during the auction now showed 27 missed calls and 43 text messages. Most came from my family, but several were from unknown numbers, journalists seeking statements, collectors requesting meetings, and galleries offering representation. I ignored them all, too emotionally spent to respond. Instead, I stared at the half-finished canvas on my easel, the woman stepping from shadow into light, and realized I now knew exactly how to complete it. Sleep claimed me still in my auction clothes, dreamless and deep for the first time in months. Morning brought reality in the form of news alerts on my phone. Anonymous artist revealed as auction sensation, headlined the Art Daily newsletter. The New York Culture section featured Family Secret, N.R. Gray unmasked at Westfield. Social media buzzed with speculation about my story, some pieces surprisingly accurate, others wildly embellished. My phone continued its assault of notifications. My mother had left 7 voicemails, each message shifting between wounded accusations and attempts at reconciliation. Natalie, call me immediately. We need to discuss yesterday's performance. Darling, I hope you realize how hurtful your behavior was to the family. After all we've done. The Sinclairs asked about commissioning a piece from you. I took the liberty of saying you'd consider it. Call me. Your father is very upset. The least you could do is acknowledge family at public events. I've always supported your creativity, Natalie. This narrative that we didn't is simply untrue. Several reporters have called the house. What exactly have you been saying about us? We're your family, regardless of this new situation. Call me. My father's messages focused exclusively on financial management, as though nothing emotional had transpired at all. Amanda sent a single text, "Hope the spotlight was worth burning family bridges." Thomas alone offered genuine support. "Proud of you. Let me know if you need anything." While the digital chaos continued, Marcus called with practical next steps. The gallery's been swamped with inquiries. We need to decide on your representation strategy now that N.R. Gray is Natalie Reed. What do you recommend? I asked, trusting his experience with artistic revelations. Maintain limited availability. Select one major interview to control the narrative. Consider a small exclusive showing of new work within 6 months to capitalize on momentum. The conversation shifted to logistics, contract reviews, commission structures, exhibition planning. The business of art had suddenly become my primary focus, a reality both exhilarating and overwhelming. With Marcus's guidance, I navigated the immediate aftermath. I leased a proper studio in an artist's building downtown, no longer needing to hide my profession. I moved from my cramped apartment to a modest but light-filled loft with northern exposure, the dream of every painter. I hired an art lawyer to review contracts and a financial advisor to manage the auction proceeds. 2 weeks after the auction, my family appeared uninvited at my new studio. They arrived unannounced, my mother leading with a housewarming plant and forced smile. "Your doorman let us up," she explained, eyes cataloging every detail of the space. We thought it was time to clear the air. The studio represented my authentic self in ways my family had never witnessed. Canvases in various stages of completion, reference photos pinned to boards, paint-splattered floors, and the organized chaos of creative process. Seeing them standing awkwardly amidst my true life created a surreal disconnect. "You should have called first," I said, not offering to take their coats. Families shouldn't need appointments, my mother replied automatically, though her confidence wavered when I didn't immediately agree. My father surveyed the space with appraising eyes. Good light. Reasonable square footage. What are you paying in rent? Dad, that's not why we're here, Thomas interjected, showing more backbone than I'd ever witnessed. We came to talk, not evaluate real estate. The conversation that followed was stilted and uncomfortable. My parents attempted to rewrite our history, casting themselves as supportive figures who had merely wanted security for their daughter. Amanda remained largely silent, examining my work with unreadable expressions. Thomas alone seemed genuinely interested in understanding my artistic process. When my mother suggested a family showing at their country club, I found myself setting the firm boundary that had eluded me for decades. I'm not interested in being the Reed family success story now that my work has monetary value, I said calmly. My career exists independently of family connections. But we could help open doors, my father insisted. The doors are already open, I replied. And I opened them myself. They left without resolving anything, but something had fundamentally shifted. For the first time, I hadn't sought their approval or acceptance. I had stated my truth and let it stand without apology. As my public identity as N.R. Gray merged with my personal identity as Natalie Reed, I found unexpected liberation. I connected with other artists who understood the creative struggle, developing friendships based on shared passion rather than family obligation. Gallery openings, studio visits, and artist retreats introduced me to people who accepted me for my vision and voice. I began work on a new collection that reflected this emotional liberation. Where inherited silence had captured the pain of invisibility, these new pieces explored emergence, voice, and authenticity. Colors grew bolder, perspectives more assured, and emotional resonance more universal. The process wasn't without pain. Years of family dynamics couldn't be resolved through one dramatic confrontation. I began therapy to address the childhood wounds that had shaped my relationship with creativity and success. My therapist helped me recognize patterns of seeking validation where it would never be given. Your family may never see you as you wish to be seen, she explained during one particularly difficult session. The question is whether you can accept that limitation without letting it limit you. This insight became central to my healing and creative expansion. I stopped creating from a place of proving worth and began creating from authentic expression, regardless of reception. Gallery offers arrived from across the country: New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, Miami. I carefully selected partnerships that valued artistic integrity over commercial pressure. Marcus remained my primary representative, his early belief in my work earning my enduring loyalty. After careful consideration, I decided to hold my first solo exhibition as Natalie Reed at Marcus's gallery, where my journey as N.R. Gray had begun. We selected Visibility, the journey from silence, as the theme, featuring new works alongside Inherited Silence on loan from Sophia Lambert's collection. As I created work for the exhibition, I found myself painting without fear for the first time. Each canvas represented not just emotional expression but personal liberation. The centerpiece became a self-portrait titled No Longer Invisible, a direct gaze study with fractured background but completely integrated figure, representing wholeness emerging from fragmentation. The freedom of creating without hiding my identity transformed my technique. Critics noted the evolution, describing my new work as more confident, emotionally resolved, and technically liberating. What they couldn't see was how each brushstroke represented a step away from seeking approval and toward embracing authentic voice. Through this process, I discovered the most valuable lesson of my journey. True success comes not from external validation but from creative authenticity. The millions earned at auction meant less than the integrity of expression that had earned them. Returning to my tiny apartment alone after the auction created a strange dissonance. The space that had witnessed years of struggle and secret creation now felt like a relic from another life. I stood in the doorway, taking in the paint-splattered floor, the stack of canvases in the corner, the makeshift easel near the window that caught northern light for precisely 3 hours each morning. This humble space had birthed a painting that sold for $3.5 million. The absurdity of it struck suddenly, and I collapsed onto my worn sofa, tears flowing without warning. They weren't tears of happiness or sadness specifically, but of relief, vindication, grief, and something like freedom all mixed together. I cried for the young girl whose art was relegated to her bedroom. I cried for the college student who fought for her education against family opposition. I cried for the woman who created in secret for fear of judgment. And perhaps most acutely, I cried for the years spent seeking approval from people fundamentally incapable of giving it. When the emotional storm passed, a strange calm settled over me. For the first time, I felt no urgency to check my phone for family messages or craft careful responses. Let them process this revelation in their own way. I had carried the weight of their expectations my entire life. Tonight, I would set that burden down. Morning brought reality crashing back in the form of news coverage. My phone notification screen filled with alerts. Anonymous artist revealed as auction sensation, headlined the Art Daily newsletter. The New York Culture section featured Family Secret and Our Gray Unmasked at Westfield. Social media buzzed with speculation about my story, some pieces surprisingly accurate, others wildly embellished. The phone itself became a battlefield, with missed calls and messages accumulating faster than I could process them. My mother had left 7 voicemails, each cycling between wounded accusations and attempts at reconciliation. Natalie, call me immediately. We need to discuss yesterday's performance. Darling, I hope you realize how hurtful your behavior was to the family. After all we've done. The Sinclairs asked about commissioning a piece from you. I took the liberty of saying you'd consider it. Call me. Your father is very upset. The least you could do is acknowledge family at public events. I've always supported your creativity, Natalie. This narrative that we didn't is simply untrue. Several reporters have called the house. What exactly have you been saying about us? We're your family, regardless of this new situation. Call me. My father's messages focused exclusively on financial management, as though nothing emotional had transpired at all. Amanda sent a single text, "Hope the spotlight was worth burning family bridges." Thomas alone offered genuine support. Proud of you. Let me know if you need anything. Amidst this digital chaos, Marcus called with practical next steps. The gallery's been swamped with inquiries. We need to decide on your representation strategy now that N.R. Gray is Natalie Reed. What do you recommend? I asked, grateful for his experience with artistic revelations. Maintain limited availability. Select one major interview to control the narrative. Consider a small exclusive showing of new work within 6 months to capitalize on momentum. Our conversation shifted to logistics, contract reviews, commission structures, exhibition planning. The business of art had suddenly become my primary focus, a reality both exhilarating and overwhelming. With Marcus's guidance, I navigated the immediate aftermath. I leased a proper studio in an artist's building downtown, no longer needing to hide my profession. I moved from my cramped apartment to a modest but light-filled loft with northern exposure, the dream of every painter. I hired an art lawyer to review contracts and a financial advisor to manage the auction proceeds. 2 weeks after the auction, my family appeared uninvited at my new studio. They arrived unannounced, my mother leading with a housewarming plant and forced smile. "Your doorman let us up," she explained, eyes cataloging every detail of the space. We thought it was time to clear the air. The studio represented my authentic self in ways my family had never witnessed. Canvases in various stages of completion, reference photos pinned to boards, paint-splattered floors, and the organized chaos of creative process. Seeing them standing awkwardly amidst my true life created a surreal disconnect. "You should have called first," I said, not offering to take their coats. "Families shouldn't need appointments," my mother replied automatically, though her confidence wavered when I didn't immediately agree. My father surveyed the space with appraising eyes. "Good light. Reasonable square footage. What are you paying in rent?" "Dad, that's not why we're here," Thomas interjected, showing more backbone than I'd ever witnessed. "We came to talk, not evaluate real estate." The conversation that followed was stilted and uncomfortable. My parents attempted to rewrite our history, casting themselves as supportive figures who had merely wanted security for their daughter. Amanda remained largely silent, examining my work with unreadable expressions. Thomas alone seemed genuinely interested in understanding my artistic process. When my mother suggested a family showing at their country club, I found myself setting the firm boundary that had eluded me for decades. I'm not interested in being the Reed family success story now that my work has monetary value, I said calmly. My career exists independently of family connections. But we could help open doors, my father insisted. The doors are already open, I replied. And I opened them myself. They left without resolving anything, but something had fundamentally shifted. For the first time, I hadn't sought their approval or acceptance. I had stated my truth and let it stand without apology. As my public identity as N.R. Gray merged with my personal identity as Natalie Reed, I found unexpected liberation. I connected with other artists who understood the creative struggle, developing friendships based on shared passion rather than family obligation. Gallery openings, studio visits, and artist retreats introduced me to people who accepted me for my vision and voice. I began work on a new collection that reflected this emotional liberation. Where inherited silence had captured the pain of invisibility, these new pieces explored emergence, voice, and authenticity. Colors grew bolder, perspectives more assured, and emotional resonance more universal. The process wasn't without pain. Years of family dynamics couldn't be resolved through one dramatic confrontation. I began therapy to address the childhood wounds that had shaped my relationship with creativity and success. My therapist helped me recognize patterns of seeking validation where it would never be given. Your family may never see you as you wish to be seen, she explained during one particularly difficult session. The question is whether you can accept that limitation without letting it limit you. This insight became central to my healing and creative expansion. I stopped creating from a place of proving worth and began creating from authentic expression, regardless of reception. Gallery offers arrived from across the country: New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, Miami. I carefully selected partnerships that valued artistic integrity over commercial pressure. Marcus remained my primary representative, his early belief in my work earning my enduring loyalty. After careful consideration, I decided to hold my first solo exhibition as Natalie Reed at Marcus's gallery, where my journey as N.R. Gray had begun. We selected Visibility, the journey from silence, as the theme, featuring new works alongside Inherited Silence on loan from Sophia Lambert's collection. As I created work for the exhibition, I found myself painting without fear for the first time. Each canvas represented not just emotional expression but personal liberation. The centerpiece became a self-portrait titled No Longer Invisible, a direct gaze study with fractured background but completely integrated figure, representing wholeness emerging from fragmentation. The freedom of creating without hiding my identity transformed my technique. Critics noted the evolution, describing my new work as more confident, emotionally resolved, and technically liberating. What they couldn't see was how each brushstroke represented a step away from seeking approval and toward embracing authentic voice. Through this process, I discovered the most valuable lesson of my journey. True success comes not from external validation but from creative authenticity. The millions earned at auction meant less than the integrity of expression that had earned them. 6 months after the auction revelation, I stood in the transformed space of Perspective Gallery, surrounded by 18 new paintings that chronicled my journey from silence to voice. The exhibition would open to the public in 2 hours, but in this quiet moment, I allowed myself to fully absorb what we had created. Marcus had reimagined the gallery for this show, painting walls in graduated tones from deep shadow to brilliant light, mirroring the emotional journey in the artwork. Spotlights created intentional pathways through the space, guiding viewers from inherited silence at the entrance through increasingly liberated expressions, culminating in the self-portrait, no longer invisible, on the far wall. Each painting represented a specific part of my journey. Family Table depicted the Reed dinner gatherings with figures rendered in perfect technical detail but emotional absence. Yale Rejection showed torn application papers reforming into art supplies. Grandmother's Gift captured hands passing brushes across generations. Double Life presented split canvases of marketing facades and authentic creation. The central piece, my self-portrait, broke from my usual fractured style. It showed me looking directly at the viewer, surrounded by integrated rather than fragmented elements, symbolizing the wholeness that comes from authenticity. Unlike my previous work, Shadows didn't obscure but rather provided depth and dimension. 3 days earlier, I had mailed exhibition invitations to my family. After much consideration, I included personal notes with each. "This is who I've always been, Natalie." The decision to include them wasn't about reconciliation or vindication, but about completion. Whether they attended or not, I had acknowledged their place in my story while asserting my ownership of its telling. As gallery staff made final adjustments to lighting and labels, I felt none of the anxiety that had plagued me before the auction. Instead, a peaceful confidence had taken its place, not arrogance about my work's reception, but certainty in its authenticity. The exhibition opening unfolded like a dream sequence. Art critics engaged thoughtfully with each piece, noting the evolution from inherited silence to my newer works. Collectors discussed acquisition possibilities with Marcus, while I explained my techniques to emerging artists. Sophia Lambert proudly stood beside Inherited Silence, telling anyone who would listen about her intuition regarding its importance. Midway through the evening, I looked up to see my family standing awkwardly at the entrance. They had come as a unit, maintaining the appearance of family solidarity as always. My mother wore her gallery opening outfit, understated luxury signaling cultural appreciation. My father looked uncomfortable but determined. Amanda seemed uncertain without her usual social script. Thomas brought a surprise, his 10-year-old daughter Emily, who clutched a sketchbook. I approached them with measured steps, aware of curious eyes watching this reunion. "Thank you for coming," I said simply. My mother studied the nearest painting, a study of hands either releasing or grasping, depending on perspective. "Your brushwork technique has improved considerably," she offered, the closest thing to a compliment she could manage. My father cleared his throat. "The gallery owner mentioned significant interest from major collectors. I was wrong about your talent having commercial value." The admission, limited as it was to financial validation, represented a seismic shift in my father's worldview. I nodded acknowledgement, without needing to press for more. Amanda surprised me by asking a genuine question about my creative process. "How do you decide which moments to capture? Is it planned or intuitive?" "Both," I answered, engaging with her curiosity. "I plan the technical elements, but allow emotional response to guide the execution." Thomas's daughter tugged at my sleeve, opening her sketchbook to show drawings that reminded me powerfully of my own childhood work. "Aunt Natalie, Dad says you can teach me about colors." The simple request bridged decades of family complexity. "I'd love to, Emily. Maybe you can visit my studio sometime." As my family moved through the exhibition, something remarkable happened. Sophia Lambert approached my mother directly, creating the social connection Eleanor had sought her entire life. "Your daughter's work expresses emotional truths rarely captured in contemporary art. You must be very proud." Instead of her usual social performance, my mother paused before responding. "I'm learning to understand her work," she said with unexpected honesty. "And perhaps to understand her." Later, as the crowd thinned, my mother found me alone beside my self-portrait. "What inspired you to keep going despite us?" she asked, the question lacking her usual defensive tone. The honesty of her inquiry created space for my truthful answer. "I never painted despite you. I painted because of you, because of us." Every family's silence became a color. Every dismissal became a brushstroke. Every unmet need for validation became a composition seeking balance. She studied the self-portrait, seeing me perhaps for the first time. "I always wanted security for you. Art seemed so uncertain." "Life is uncertain," I replied gently. Art was my certainty. The exchange wasn't dramatic reconciliation or tearful apology, but it represented the first authentic moment between us in decades, two adults acknowledging different perspectives without demanding change. As the exhibition came to a close, Sophia Lambert made an announcement that stunned the remaining attendees. "The Lambert Foundation is acquiring Natalie Reed's entire Visibility collection for permanent installation in our museum's contemporary wing. These works represent an important evolution in emotional expressionism that deserves preservation." The announcement sparked congratulations and celebration, but I found myself seeking quiet in the small office behind the gallery. The journey from invisibility to recognition had culminated in this moment of professional triumph, yet the most significant victory remained personal. I had discovered that approval was never the goal. The pursuit of validation from those fundamentally unable to provide it had been a distraction from authentic expression. My family might never fully understand or appreciate my work, and that recognition no longer diminished its value or my own. When the gallery finally emptied, I stood alone before my self-portrait. The woman looking back from the canvas had my features, but possessed something I had only recently claimed: complete self-recognition. She didn't need external validation to know her worth or direction. She had found her voice through creative expression and would never again silence it for others' comfort. In that moment of quiet reflection, I realized the most profound truth of my journey. True validation comes only from within. External recognition might bring financial security or professional opportunities, but only internal authenticity brings peace. My family would remain complicated, our relationships requiring ongoing navigation of boundaries and expectations. But I no longer carried the weight of their approval as the measure of my success. The $3.5 million validation had proven less transformative than the simple act of standing in my truth, regardless of reception. As I prepared to leave the gallery, I noticed Thomas's daughter had forgotten her sketchbook. Opening it, I found drawings remarkably similar to my childhood work, full of emotion and perspective beyond her years. On the final page, she had attempted to copy elements of my self-portrait, adding a note: "I want to paint truth like Aunt Natalie." I closed the book gently, recognizing both the generational echo and the profound difference. Unlike my childhood, her artistic expression would have at least one family member who recognized its value from the beginning. Have you ever had to fight for your passion against those who should have supported you the most? What helped you stay true to yourself when others dismissed your dreams? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this journey from invisibility to authenticity resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need the reminder that validation comes from within, not from others' approval. Thank you for joining me on this deeply personal story, and remember, your authentic voice matters, even when others can't hear its value yet.